So regarding the Saudis funding jihadist groups in the Fertile Crescent area, a lot of people will say, that doesn't make any sense. These people claim they want to take down the Saudi monarchy, and it's just not in their interests. And so it must be money coming from other donors within Saudi Arabia that want to fight it. This is um, a narrative that largely misses the plot. The whole point is to sow division in the region, to create a mass so that the Saudis can come in afterwards. Um, it's okay. 2 points. Number one, if the Saudis were to declare themselves the caliphs and just start marching in by force, that would create a backlash because they would never be seen as legitimate, right? The Turks were not seen as legitimate caliphs, and the Saudis would not be seen as legitimate caliphs either, even though, of course, the broader geopolitical ambitions of the Saudi state at the moment are to essentially recreate the boundaries of the Islamic Caliphate as a political entity, as a geopolitical entity, right? So the Saudis are left with the need to find tactical ways to construct their empire as they desire, which does place themselves at the head of something, both in terms of secular, insofar as secular even exists, and religious terms. The way to do that is to create a movement, to fund it from the outside, to make it look more. That's what I'm looking for here. To make it look more real, anyways. That's not the word I'm looking for, but to make it look like it's like an indigenous uprising of people looking to, start that are claiming the caliph, right? So it has this sort of bottom-up feel rather than this top-down feel. It worked in Iran, right? I'm not saying the Saudis are backing the Iranians. I'm just saying that like the whole bottom-up thing worked in Iran, right? So I mean, and this is what they want to do for that reason. Um, and the second is that they want to take control of that region, right? So um, it's really, I mean, of course, um, it's going to seem that way, but you're misunderstanding what's actually going on if you want to take that position. This is in the interests of the Saudi monarchy, um, so long as it unfolds on those terms, right? Um, as I say, the Saudis could not. It could. There's no way the Saudis could just march in. Okay, they've got lots of money. They've got lots of weapons. They could do it, but they'd be dealing with guerrilla warfare for centuries. The the population would never accept that, right? So they've got to find ways to do it. The Americans seem to have a split personality regarding this. On the one hand, it's in their benefit to have all of these kinds of warring tribes to prevent any specific power from getting too ahead of itself. On the other hand, a level of stability is useful to it as well. I think that what the Americans would like to see is something like the European Union, where you have a block of countries that is essentially integrated, but there's still enough decentralization that they can play them off against each other, right? So you can have the French and the Germans, get into a fight over this or that. That's what the Americans want, is that situation, so that it's a large geopolitical entity. It makes its own decisions, sort of. It acts as a coherent whole. There's a stability in that. right? There's not really any fear that the Spanish are going to get taken over by the Russians because they're in this entity, right? But at the same time, you've got these groups fighting against each other. You got the Brits fighting against the Germans, and the Swedes fighting against the Spaniards, and the Italians fighting against the Dutch, and all these kinds of things, right? All this kind of jockeying for power and interest. They want that because it keeps them apart, and it allows them to take sides, and cut deals, right? So this is in their benefit as well, to put stability while maintaining division. But it's just you are missing the plot. I'm not this. Like I say, this source is screwy. Like they're also suggesting that Israel's not giving them a dime. Israel has nothing to do with this, but everything's Israel's fault, right? There's a strong streak of that in there, and I'm not somebody that's going to come to Israel's defenses, very very frequently, but I know bullshit when I see it at the same time, right? So um, that's something you want to avoid, right? And the other thing is that they're missing the whole strategy, the whole divide and conquer strategy, right? So what the Americans want to do is they want to play the Turks off against the Saudis. The Turks and the Qataris are kind of aligned on that, right? So they're trying to play the Saudis off against the Qataris and have them fight over hegemony. When you talk about a caliph in the region, the Turks become very relevant because it was the Ottoman Empire that ran the space for a millennia after the Arabs collapsed, right? And before the Arabs, it was it was the Romans, but before them, it was the Persians, right? So this whole kind of abstract thing, right? But it's not this contradiction that the mainstream media wants to put down and that Corbett is sort of parroting here is not really there. And the only way that you can really uphold that as a contradiction is if you're missing the plot, if you're not really understanding what's happening, which is, the division's intentional, but the broader term strategy and what you will see here in the long run, whether it culminates in a Saudi peacekeeping force deployed to Iraq, or it's just arranged in terms of a Saudi dominated kind of confederacy. That's the end point here is Saudi hegemony over this broad swath of area. They seem to be cut off by Algeria at the moment. It's hard to say whether that break in Algeria is due to the scope of their ambitions, or if it's just a hard block due to the political realities. I haven't heard anything happening in Morocco or anything around there, so they might be kind of just, that might be understood as outside of their space. I don't know, really. Algeria is not really quite the same. If you're taking Libya and Tunisia, then you're getting Carthage, right? So that seems to be their swap down, right? From Carthage down the coast through Egypt, up around to Constantinople, across the Zagreb, across the Caucasus, and down the Zagros Mountains. That's the space of classical Islamic civilization. And then, you've got the buffer zone in Central Asia that I think the Americans would like to keep to themselves, to the chagrin of Chinese and increasingly Indian territorial ambitions. But that's what's the point of it is. So don't get lost in that contradiction. Sorry, in that seeming contradiction, which isn't actually really there.